People think that real estate is a super get rich quick thing. And I think it's a get rich slow. Most people are not in real estate because they want another job. They're in real estate because they want to build wealth and allow real estate to make their life better. And so in order to do that, you need to have a great, I feel like is really still a little underrated. I would consider building up that equity and going from there. I think that's a brilliant way to do it. And so I think that is the most important thing, is that you create your own personal through your personal real estate blueprint to then look at the strategies and decide what is going to be best for you is key. You cannot rely on the market just appreciating.
What's one mistake you made early on in your investing journey that you'll never forget?
Not easily, we left $10 million on the table. And so the biggest mistake is, that's the biggest, like, there's my $10 million mistake right there.
Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. Today, we're excited to be joined by Lisa Michaud, a seasoned real estate investor with over 13 years experience and a portfolio that includes over 90 doors. Lisa specializes in multifamily real estate, mobile home parks, and self-storage units. In the last few years, her and her husband have grown their portfolio to, like I said, over 90 doors while investing remotely in properties that they've never seen in certain cases, right? Lisa, we're excited to have you here and unpack all the knowledge that you have to offer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here, and I can't wait to talk about all things real estate.
Honestly, many new investors feel overwhelmed by, the variety of asset types in real estate and how they can get started. Do you mind sharing what this journey looked like for you? How you got started? What pulled you towards, the multifamily, mobile home storage, self-storage strategies? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be like, hey, we heard about multifamily and we did it. And then we heard about mobile home parks and we did it. And that was easy. But that was not our journey. And I would guess that for most people listening, that's probably not your journey. So for us, we started 13 years ago. And I say we started as accidental landlords because we had zero strategy. We had zero education, maybe less than zero education. Because all we'd ever heard at that point was just horror stories about real estate, to be really honest. We had no idea what we were doing. And Troy owned a house. He's my husband now. And we had the opportunity to buy a house together. And we had this extra kind of home. And we're like, should we sell it, take that money out, or should we turn it into a rental? And that is about as much of a conversation as we had about it. We're like, well, let's just turn it into a rental. And honestly, that's about all we did for several years. And the thing is that rental was so good to us. It was very easy. It made money behind the scenes. And we were so busy living our lives that we just really did not pay any more attention or any more strategy to it. And then I had a health scare. And so it was about 10 years ago now. We'd recently gotten married. We're living in Northern Alberta in Fort McMurray. Life is really good. And I faced the reality that I might only have a year or two left to live. And I remember that night laying in bed with Troy. And I looked at him and I said, what do you want to do if I only have a year or two left to live? And he said, Lisa, you're the one with the timeline. What do you want to do? And the first thing that came to my mind in that moment was move to Vancouver. And I share this because what opened up for me in that moment, and I'll be, spoiler alert, I'm still here. I was a scare and I'm healthy today. But it really woke me up to this reality that so many times in our life, we say we want to do things, or we have these dreams or these ideas or like things that call us, whether it's moving to Vancouver or going to Thailand or starting a business or investing in real estate. And we tell ourselves these stories like, I'm not ready. I don't know enough. Yeah. It's too expensive. What if I fail? What if somebody watches me fail? What's my family going to think? All of these things come in and they stop us from doing what we really want to do. And that is what had happened to me. And so my health scare was really a wake up call to be like, okay, I hear you loud and clear. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to go do the things I want to do. So we quit our jobs, sold a bunch of houses, sold some cars, live in downtown Vancouver now today, still to this day, super happy to be recording live from downtown Vancouver. We went to Thailand, we did the things. And one of the other things, beautiful gifts that came out of that health scare was also this realization that as much as we were young and healthy at the time, we're like in our 20s and things were good, like our health is not guaranteed. And we actually need to pay attention to that. And we also can make our money work for us. Like we were working very hard. We had high incomes, but our money was just sitting under the mattress. That real estate property I was talking about, we set it and we forget it. And I'll tell you, real estate is not an instant pot here, friends. Like it is not the same thing. No. You have to pay attention. And so that really got us serious about our money and got us moving and exploring strategies. So from there, we did a couple of rent to own deals. We tried some short-term rentals. Still sort of have it, except for the new policy changes in BC. And then we really started to learn a little bit more about multifamily. And we ended up also kind of accidentally, we're like, let's try a duplex. Let's just see what happens here. And as soon as we bought that duplex, and in one transaction, in a very short period of time, we went from 1 door to 3 doors. We were like, holy, this is life-changing. This is incredible. The following year, we started to learn a little bit more. We got a little bit more serious, and we went from 3 doors. We bought a 6-plex and went to 9 doors. And we were like, wow, in 13 months, we went from 1 to 9 doors. And we started to really understand the possibilities from there. And so that really is how we got introduced to multifamily, is really from like seeing its potential, doing a little bit of it, and then realizing how much more we could do. So all that to say, like, we didn't get educated. We didn't listen to a lot of podcasts. We didn't really know what we were doing in the beginning. We kind of just stumbled upon it. But what really changed was when we started to get intentional. And that's why, what your show is all about is about educating people and about helping people see some of the different directions, see some of the different strategies. And once we started to open ourselves up to be like, okay, if we just did this, like, what else can we do? Then we started to get educated. And then we realized, oh yeah, multifamily, like, there really are some serious pros and cons that we love about this. And mobile home parks, there's some similarities there and some opportunities there. And self-storage is also things that we really like in that. And we were able to match, this is really important here, not just the strategy and the pros and cons of the strategy, but also like, what do we want in our lives? And when we were able to match those things, that's when the magic has really happened, and we've been able to grow. And I need to correct you, even on the bio, like, we're over 100 doors now. We just closed on a property about 6 weeks ago.
Congrats.
That took us over 100 doors. So it's been quite a journey, but it wasn't always this way. And so I understand coming into it, it's super easy to be like, oh, one day I'll do it, or it's too expensive, or I don't know enough, whatever that is. And I guess I hope that through this episode, you learn something, and also start to realize, like, it's probably closer than you think.
Thank you for that breakdown. Biggest takeaway that I got from all of that is living purposefully. And having that scare allows you to take this would be nice to every day counts. How can I do what I want to do? I can live purposefully, and I have control over where I live, the life I lead. And honestly, that's probably such a big blessing, because it really changes the trajectory of your life. Being able to have that moment where you can really reflect and dig deep, that starting point of what do I really want, versus like, wake up, let's just live on autopilot. You know what I mean? There's nothing purposeful about that. So I love that starting point, and the fact that you highlighted that, because that's I think that's a pivotal moment, and I hope that people listening can find their pivotal moment, because that allows you to dig deep when things are a little bit tougher, and really just see it through, so that you can break through those barriers. But love the journey, and the fact that you highlighted how you progressed, and it's not like you knew what you wanted or what the best strategy would end up being for you at the end of the day. It was let's get going. Now, looking back on this all, and maybe for newer investors who are at that starting point, and they figuring out what they want and their why. We always, as investors, figure out your why, and now they're at the stage where it's like, okay, where do I start? What strategy do I start? Do I just take maybe this little bit of capital that I have and put it into some coaching and some hand holding and being able to shorten that learning curve so I don't make the mistakes myself? Do I take this little bit and just get started as my first accidental landlord into a small investment property and grow from there? Obviously, it's different for everybody based on their resources and based on what they're trying to achieve. Like you mentioned, you need to be purposeful with that as well. What are you trying to achieve? Are you looking to be more active? What role are you looking to play with regards to real estate supporting your life and your goals? But for you, specifically for you, going back and having a magic wand so that things could just work out perfectly for you. I mean, they seem like they worked out pretty well. But just going back, how would you do things? Would you do things differently, or would you say that was just the most ideal way that things could have played out?
Well, I mean, I think I'll say this. I'm, take this a little bit spiritual, but I feel like in my life, I'm really grateful for every experience. And so I wouldn't change anything in my life, because I believe it's who I am.
Change anything.
But And this is just as important is I believe that and I believe we often go through some of the hard times so that then we can pass along that knowledge and the wisdom. So while I wouldn't change my journey, I really freaking want to change other people's journeys. I don't want it to be as hard. Like I want people to learn from my mistakes. I don't want you to have to go through those same pieces that I did. You're going to have your own stuff, your own life path, your own life journey.
Yeah.
Your lessons are going to come in different ways. But if I can help people from making some of the same mistakes that we made, then I do believe that that's part of my purpose. And so I wouldn't want to change that for me, but I want to change it for you and for everybody listening. So what I would say, okay, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say, so sorry, I should have phrased it this way then. For any younger Lisa out there who maybe wants to aspire to achieve exactly what you want to achieve, and they want to know what's the best way to do this, what question should I be asking myself? How should I get started? Let's put it that way, because you're absolutely right. You don't want to change this. It's gotten you to where you are today. So each and every experience was absolutely worth it. But for someone out there who's like, Lisa, I want to be like you. I want to achieve what you've achieved. You know what I mean? For myself, what do you recommend?
So I always say the first 3 steps are always the same. And I believe they're important to have happen before you start looking at strategies and markets and all that pieces. So number 1, and you sort of spoke to it, but you said the why. I would also say the goal. And you said it really beautifully. I really believe that real estate is meant to fuel our life and help us. Our money should be there to work for us and make our lives better. And that's what we're talking about, building wealth through real estate. So what kind of life do you want to be living? And how does your wealth and how does real estate in particular support that? So for some people, if what you really want, for example, is to be able to travel and or live in an urban center, then your strategy is going to be different than someone who's looking to retire earlier or looking to potentially have cash flow in their lives now. If what you're looking is to get out of a job that you hate right now, and you're like, I will do anything. I'll do all the tenants, all the toilets. I hate the job I'm doing. I want to be a property manager. Well, your strategy is going to be different. So it's really important to understand what is it that you want to create in your life? So what are your life goals? So a good way to think about this is imagine your 80th birthday and imagine who's in the room with you. Where are you? What are people saying about you? What is the impact you've had on them? What kind of jokes are you making? Are you dancing? Are you laughing? Are you toasting? What are you toasting to? What are you toasting with? All those kinds of things. And then start to roll that camera backwards. And of course, if you're younger, if you're 20, you got more years to roll back than I do. But roll that back and okay, so if that's what 80 looks like what is 35 look like, and what does 45 look like, and what does 55 look like, and 65, and start to see that. And then it's really starting to understand, okay, then you can get more granular in terms of what's the 1 to 5 year goal, and that's 5 to 10 years, and then 10 to 20. I think that those are really good timeframes. I often say people, I think the social media has done a lot of damage, actually. One of the most damaging things I think it's done is that people think that real estate is a super get rich quick thing. And I think it's a get rich slow. And so I think that's just something I'll say for anybody that's I'm looking to get really rich really fast. Probably real estate, maybe not isn't your strategy at all. I think a faster way to make money is in a career or in a business than it is real estate. Real estate is generally much more long-term. So first thing is knowing what you want. Second thing, we have something that we teach, we call the personal real estate blueprint. And within that, I'll just pick out some of the key pieces. Key pieces like interest. Are you even interested in real estate? I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are. But if you're oh my gosh, my husband or my wife my partner is making me listen to this again, you don't like it. Real estate just probably isn't for you. You should have some genuine interest in it. You're listening to the podcast, you go over to a barbecue and you happen to find out one other person that's also interested in real estate. You have conversations and you go on vacation and you're looking at the properties in different cities, and you have to, I believe, have some enjoyment in it. Otherwise, there's so many other ways to invest your money outside of real estate. Go pick one that's interesting. Don't make this a boring process. So make sure you're interested. Make sure you also understand your time capacity. So how much bandwidth do you have? Different seasons of life are going to have different bandwidths. If you are brand new and starting a business, it is a lot of work. If you're brand new in a job, for example, you might have a huge learning curve. And it doesn't mean that forever you're not going to be able to have a ton of time to invest, but it might mean hey, why don't we pick something a little more passive to start, or something that's a little bit different versus something that's more time intensive. Same thing with when you have a family. I would never do a intensive fix and flip that I'm doing hands on with a newborn baby or a young family. You're just in a different season of life. So you have to understand, how much time do I have to dedicate to this? How much time do I want to? All of those questions are important. The third step I'll add in is your financing. So you have to understand not just that you have money, but how much and where is it coming from, and how much potential money do you have? And when you understand those three things, so you understand your goals, what you're trying to achieve, you understand your financing, how much money you have, where it's going to come from, how much it's going to cost you if you're borrowing it, and then you also understand your personal blueprint. What are your interests? I didn't talk about it a lot, but like even skills, like what do you experience you have, skills, strengths, that kind of thing, and you understand how much time you have to give. Then you have a foundation, and you have. I really think of it like a filter or like a lens, because then you can start to learn about the different strategies with intention. Because let me tell you, somebody out there has made a ton of money with all of these strategies. Let me tell you something else. So somebody's made a ton of mistakes with all of these strategies. These strategies don't work for absolutely everybody at every single time, at every single season of life, at every budget, in every market, blah, 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 blah. You get what I'm saying? So it's really important to have the filter to say, this is what I want. This is what I have the interest in, the capacity for, the time for, and the cash for, and this is going to help me get what I want in my life. Then you can look at the different strategies and be able to analyze them that way. And it doesn't mean that, like, let's say you're like, sure, I would love to one day own a boutique hotel, but right now I don't have maybe that budget or that bandwidth or whatever that is. It doesn't mean it's a never. It's just a, hey, for what I'm trying to achieve in my life right now, there's a few more steps I need to put in my place and a few more things I need to do before I do that thing. And so I think that is the most important thing, is that you create your own personal filter through your goals, through your personal real estate blueprint and your financing options, to then look at the strategies and decide what is going to be best for you.
100%. Mic drop. Okay, thank you everyone for listening. That is the end of the episode. I love that. I freaking love that. And honestly, like, I resonate with all of that, because yes, every strategy works and every strategy doesn't. And you need to be interested in what you're doing for it to be fun and for you to be somewhat good at what you do, right? If you're not interested and you don't enjoy it, you're not going to be good at it because you don't like it. But yes, understanding the resources that you have, your time, your capital, your mortgageability, and all of that will just help you cut out the noise, cut out the shiny coin syndrome. This person's doing fix and flips and they've been really successful at what they're doing. Fantastic. But you know exactly what your goals are, what your resources are. That already helps you sort of just dial in on what you need to. So I want that there, I think really, really, really serves as a fantastic foundation for newer investors. I want to try and flip it over for those a little more seasoned investors who came to this episode to try and get a little bit more of the higher level stuff. And of course, the new investors can follow along, but I want to dial into the strategies you're currently pursuing and the advantages and maybe some of the hidden challenges that people don't see. Because you're right, social media paints a one-sided picture oftentimes, and, get rich quick, which really hardly happens with anything. You don't really get results quick with anything. But that aside, let's dive into, for example, there's a biggest excitement around like the mobile home parks and self-storage. What are some potential hidden challenges? Before we go to the benefits and why you choose it as a strategy, let's start off there. What are some of the challenges that often catch potentially newer investors off guard when they want to go into mobile homes and self-storage?
Yeah, I mean, I'll even speak to some of let's start with self-storage there. Let me also say this, we made some mistakes. We are also at the point in our real estate journey and in our wealth building journey that we can afford to make some mistakes. We can have a bit of play. We can do some things. So I say this, and I say that not to brag or to be flippant, but to say that and I think whether you have, I'm not a financial advisor, but whether you have $10,000 or $10 million, there's always a portion of your money that you kind of keep the fun, whether it's buying a lottery ticket or doing things. We kind of have kept a portion of our portfolio to kind of play and experiment, and invested in a winery, and that went to zero, but we got some really expensive wine out of it. And we kind of play. So our first foray into self-storage was a bit of a play. It was just kind of an experiment and trying it out. And so we built out in the bottom of one of our mixed-use buildings, we have residential on top, commercial, retail on the bottom, and then in the bottom, half of the building was already rented out as a storage for a larger company. We thought, let's build some self-storage. Let's just see how it goes. Epic failure. We've had so many vacancies, and it just hasn't worked out as we thought it would. We've tried some different things. We've tried signage, and we're trying to play around with a little bit with SEO, and it just still hasn't taken flight. And so I do think what is important, and what I want to say is just it's not the field of dreams here. If you build it, they won't necessarily come. And so you really do have to understand like what is the demand in that neighborhood. And for us, it's all been learning. It's okay. The building still does great on its own. Like there's lots of, and maybe that'll change. Maybe in 5 years I'll be like, guess what, El Rey, it worked. But for now, it's the vacancy's been like 50 to 60%. Not a number you like to hear, but it's just the truth. So I think that it really depends on like where you're building it and what that looks like. In terms of self-storage too, one of the things that we also in one of our other buildings, we converted a carport into self-storage in the back there. And a couple lessons there, like we thought about this. We had another investor mention this to us when we first bought the building in 2018. And it took us until this year to finally be like, yeah, let's try it. Let's build it in. And it's been like 100% vacancy or 100% occupancy. We have a wait list going all the time. Even like it was an opportunity we didn't take. We're like, okay, well, one day. There's on the flip side of it, it's like, if you know that the market is looking for it, putting it up there and sooner can be very valuable. Some of the challenges we've had with it, just like some little learning curves, we're figuring out the systems of it. We thought, people they have stuff. They're going to need to put their stuff in for a long time. We didn't realize how transient it can be. And so we've had to put in process, things like damage deposits or 1 month rent in advance, because we had people that just like left with no notice. And so we had to just like recognize that people, in my mind, I was like, well, people are trying to store this stuff. They're going to need it for a long time. Not necessarily the case. It can actually be very transient. So that's one of the little things that we've learned is making sure we have the process. It's taking deposits. It's also building the wait list, building in the past. I think we were just kind of like, okay, we'll come back later. And now we're like, nope, capture all these people so that we have people, little nuances, even like finding out like what are people storing in there. So we have an understanding of like, are they more long-term, short-term? So we get a sense of what the longer term prognosis looks like. And we're still kind of exploring and learning in that process. But I think those are some of the things that we didn't think about, was how hard it might be to rent and how transient it is, and how important it is to get a deposit even on self-storage. It's easy to think it's just like $60 or $100 or whatever that number is, but you still like that vacancy is vacancy, and your numbers are still based on getting that income. And when you don't get it, it really does mess things up. So those are some of the things I would say about self-storage. In terms of mobile home parks, I'll tell you one of the most surprising, biggest challenges out there, I want to say it's somewhere in the realm of the perception and the stigma about mobile home parks, and how even though Canada-wide we have this affordability crisis and this housing crisis, you would think that more municipalities and governments and locals would be supportive of having mobile homes and trying to create affordable homes for people. And we faced a lot of resistance in that process. Like getting mobile home parks rezoned, for example, is very challenging. We tried to add more mobile homes into one of the parks, into our park, and like there was resistance around that. And even though we'd had it mapped out, like we had to really prove it, as opposed to being like, look, we're trying, like there's room here. Why wouldn't we want to house more people, right? And so that has been something that's been quite surprising. We've also been we have put offers in and negotiated on other ones and ended up having to pull out because the zoning wasn't right. And there was no chance that the city was going to rezone and even allow us to put more mobile homes, even though the space was there. So that is a challenge that I hope that we're going to figure out, like for the better of society, not just investors, but like if we're trying to really, truly house people. And why wouldn't we not want to have affordable solutions for this? And why can that not be a triple win for the people and for the investor and for our communities? So that is something that is, I think, a hidden risk or challenge that I wasn't expecting. I was like, oh, great. Everybody knows about the housing crisis. This is going to be easy. And I'm like, oh, it's not that easy. It has not been that easy.
Well, thank you for highlighting that. Yeah, you'd think with the housing crisis, like it would just be, here you go, like let's create more housing opportunities for people. Let's get this solved as quickly as we can in an ethical way. So I love all of those highlights that you did, like starting back at the self-storage, just going back to the basic economic supply and demand and ensuring that there's enough of a demand for those storage units. Now, looking back on that, I wonder, and you could always touch on this, but I wonder like what you would do differently in being proactive without having to test trial and error. Like maybe there's some signs that you saw that you'll see ahead of time now and be like, yeah, well, maybe there's not as much of a demand, or maybe we can do some more due diligence in testing this without actually jumping with both feet in. So that's one thing I'm curious about. But, the fact that you highlighted the systems and the processes, And for people who are considering this, just that in itself can be so valuable to try and implement as much of the systems earlier on, as opposed to just making those mistakes yourself. And yes, you would take it for granted. What, there's no kitchen. Like, what are they going to damage? Like, do I really need a damage deposit? Let's just be easygoing about this. You know what I mean? I love the fact that you highlighted all of that, all the way through to mobile homes and doing your due diligence ahead of time, to ensure that the zoning does in fact support whatever your plans are. I mean, you would think that goes without saying, but you probably would not expect as much red tape as you've experienced, right? So
Definitely,
I love that you
definitely.
highlighted that. So yeah, looking back at all of this, are there certain things now that you sort of just no-brainers, like systems that you've put in place? Now, you've highlighted this on the self-storage with regards to turnover and how you can sort of protect yourself in that manner. Regarding like the supply and demand behind things, on that front, and regarding the mobile home parks, what solutions and systems have you sort of personally put in place to sort of just help speed that process along and be more efficient at what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I would do to understand supply and demand better is to test and add. Just put something up on whether, we've been using our property manager's website, but get them to put up an ad and just see, like, do you get 2 people or do you get 200 people, and get a sense.
Love
Like,
that.
I think I think there's obviously, like, I wouldn't want to put people through like a huge process just to test something. I'm not going to take people through like interviews just to see if they're interested, but even just to like get a bit of a sense, like put up an ad, whether it's on Craigslist or Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, and just see what happens. Because as soon as we did that for our other one that we built out, like, it was like we had 10 messages within the first 24 hours. And so that was much more clear that there was a demand here. Whereas,
Yeah.
the other self-storage was like, we maybe got a couple of inquiries a month. So very, very big difference in that. So I think that's a simple way to test, is just to, like, put it out there, like actually put out an ad. And, I think there's probably some, sleazier ways to do this. Like, again, you do this with integrity of like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm putting this out there to see if there's demand, to see before I build this. And also knowing that, like, if we wanted to build this, we knew we were like a month to do this or less. So it wasn't like we were asking people, giving them false hope for something that was going to take, 6 years to come to fruition. It was like, hey, there's demand, like, we're going to do this. We'll make this happen. If there isn't, there isn't, and that's okay. We'll save our time. So I think that's a great way to just like test and play. I think that's okay. And in terms of mobile home parks, to be really honest with you, I think it just made us more aware as we're analyzing future deals and more mobile home parks. I gave you the example of the one where we were trying to buy it, and it had, I believe it had 4 existing homes on it, and it was a huge piece of land. And we thought, okay, we could probably add, another 10 to 20 homes on here easily. And we even went further down that process of, we looked at the bylaws, and there was actually conflicting bylaws within the city. So the actual mobile home park bylaw even listed out the property address as saying, like, this is designated zoning as mobile homes. But then they had another piece of policy that said, like, no more mobile homes can be built on this property. So they even had conflicting bylaws on that same property from the same jurisdiction. And so I don't know that I have like I think we did everything we the right way. And that's exactly what I would suggest to other people. Is what we're continuing to do, is dig deeper, especially when it comes to bylaws and really understanding them. And even just getting on the phone, we have a great team. I'm a big believer in building a good team. Our property manager in that jurisdiction has great relationships. So they called bylaw to figure out, hey, you got this saying yes and this saying no. Like, what's your take? Do you think this is going to be possible? They're like, yeah, no, nope, not possible. So we're like, okay. So I would just follow those same systems. It's like, doing your due diligence and going deeper, looking into the actual bylaws, understanding if your process is going to go, and leverage your team. If you've got a local team of experts, that any kind of relationships that they might have, leverage those as well. And don't be afraid. If we didn't have that relationship, we would have called on the phone and been like, hey, what does this process look like?
Yeah.
What are my chances of this happening? And have those conversations. And I think that is really, really, really helpful for people. So I don't know if there's anything that we could, I think we did the right things, and we just continue to do that as we look at more mobile homes. Before we say, oh, look at all this land, we have the opportunity to add more mobile homes to it, we make sure, are we allowed? And what does that look like? Maybe I'll touch on one last thing that I did not expect as well. That was a challenge. We also wanted to move in more mobile homes and buy more and add to it, which we were allowed to do. But we underestimated the cost of this. And so we thought, you could buy mobile homes for $10,000 to $20,000, and then we can just bring them in for a couple $1,000s. Well, the transfer fees for some of these have been like $10,000 to $15,000 to transport that in. And then the local bylaws around us, then we had to do like skirting and certain renovations and things like that.
Yeah.
Our first, I am shy to share this, but I will. Our first mobile home that we brought in, we were expecting it to be like $50,000, ended up being $100,000. So we're like, that was a really expensive mobile home. We learned our lesson, understand it a bit more. And it still makes sense economically. So it wasn't the end of the world. And like I said, we have the portfolio that we can support a few of these whoopsies along the way. And I hope that this saves you from making some of these whoopsies along the way. What I would say there, a system for next time is like, understand what is your transport cost going to look like, and understand if I move something in from a different, this is a very nuanced rule, but when you move, if the mobile home had come from that area, it would have been fine. We would have had to do the renovations because we brought it from another area and needed all these renovations. So just like ask the questions, get to what I would do. And now we know that for that area, but what I would do in other markets is talk to other investors that are doing this, talk to other homeowners, talk to property managers, talk to people transporting these, talk to some contractors, understand what that process looks like so that you're not stuck with a very, very expensive mobile home like we were.
Oh, gold. You make it so easy. I could just sit back. You make it so easy. Usually I have to peel back the layers to get these golden nuggets. You just keep them coming. Without me even asking. So you can run the show without me. I really love even that. What you initially said was the testing with the ads. Brilliant idea. Because you lose a couple dollars to test and see if it was worth it. You lose very little time. It's such a small investment. And yes, if you're doing it ethically with the intentions of this is the plan, well, it's a win for people if there is a demand. And they're showing you that there's a demand, well, you add in value to the community. So as long as you're doing it ethically, I think honestly, it sounds like the best way to be testing because there's very little to no investment. So I love that. That's pure gold. Tell me with regards to, and I know you mentioned before this is that Troy is the numbers guy, the number crunching guy, but just high level. Are there any specific metrics or indicators that you look at when evaluating a mobile home park versus a multifamily property? Now, you've already highlighted quite a few already. The transportation cost, like what does that look like if you're moving from, a different jurisdiction, moving that over? What does that look like? Are there any other factors that are like pure black and white? Okay, mobile homes, totally. These are some additional things we need to be looking at. What does that look like on a high level?
So one of the really important distinctions is that with a mobile home park, sometimes you only own the land and people are parking their mobile homes on top. So what your rent is pad rentals. And in other times, you might actually also own that mobile home. And in that case, you're getting a rent for the actual mobile home itself too. So those are two very different numbers. For example, in our mobile home park, the pad rentals are in the 300s and renting the actual mobile home is like over $1,000 or $1,100. And so it's really important, first of all, when you're going to analyze these deals to understand, just like you would any other deal, but like that little bit of more nuance, because in a multifamily, like, you own all of you own both sides of the duplex, or you own every single one of the apartment units, and you just need to know if it's a 1-bedroom or bachelor or a 3-bedroom. Well, you really need to know, do I own that mobile home? And is this bringing in $1,100 a month? Or is it just a pad rental and I'm bringing in $350 a month? And of course, there's ways to make that deal make sense. And deals make sense at all different levels at the right price. But you need to understand that. Otherwise, if you assume that you're getting the $1,100 on all of the mobile homes and you're just doing pad rentals, your numbers are going to be really skewed. So that is a really big one to understand. If you're looking at evaluating a mobile home park, which mobile homes do you own and which ones are pad rentals, so you can accurately understand what your income is going to be. So that is a really big one. Another big thing that we say, this is consistent with multifamily, but I just want to really bring it up. You still want to, when you're looking at, we always say people forget about like maintenance management and vacancy. One thing to consider, maintenance. If you're just doing pad rentals, your maintenance might be less because you're not dealing with toilets and kitchens and all the kind of more standard things, roofs, things like that. But you'll want to understand, what about the systems in this mobile home park? So for example, like your water, electrical, like what is owned by you roads, and what is owned by someone else. So for example, like our electrical is actually owned by the electrical company. So we don't have to worry about that. There's no maintenance associated with that. And we know that the sewer system was upgraded in the last 8 years. So that gives us an idea of what that looks like. So while you're not necessarily looking at some of the minutia of like light bulbs and doorknobs and windows, there's some bigger systems, and understanding who owns these and who's responsible for the maintenance on these is really key when it comes to mobile home park. When it comes to vacancy, I don't know that this is necessarily that we have made our numbers, done our numbers that differently, but just something to be aware of is that there's typically like, if people have their mobile homes, their own mobile homes, and they have a pad rental, I just explained to you how much it costs to move that mobile home. Like there's a significant barrier for people to actually moving their mobile homes out. So you're likely to have a lower vacancy on those because people are you're not going to have as high of turnover typically as you would in other places. So I just want to make a note of that. I personally, and I know Troy could speak to this much more, but we like to have layers of conservative estimates in there. We like to have buffers and we don't want to be like, okay, if every green light goes off, it's going to be a win. We want to know that we can hit some yellow lights, some red lights, maybe go off the road for a little while, and that the deal still makes sense. And so that's one of those things I just share to kind of be like, okay, that's interesting that maybe your vacancy might not be as high, but we still factor in for vacancy because it's better to have lower vacancy and be excited about that win versus having higher vacancy than you anticipated and then being in a cash flow negative situation. So those are a couple of the nuances between evaluating mobile home parks and multifamily.
Ooh, I love that. You don't even think of that as the vacancy. That's a fantastic point. It's not like, hey, let's pack some stuff in boxes and we out of here. It's a really, really, really.
Or let's leave it all behind. That's we've all had that happen to us. Where you're like, wow, you didn't even pack your boxes. You just left them for me. Okay.
Honestly, people listening, if they're taking notes, I'm sure they have quite an extensive checklist already, and there's probably a lot more that you have to go through. Now, with that being said, though, what gives you the confidence, and how can people get the confidence to not only, ensure that everything looks good, but do this from afar, remotely? You have to have good systems in place and stuff like that. Can you touch on what's allowed you guys to be successful at doing what you do? Like some key things that you can credit that to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to share 2 anecdotes on this. So I totally get it for the person who is like, I could never invest where I don't live. That was, and Troy hates when I tell the story. Love hates, but he's not here, so I can tell it. So I remember the day we were living in Fort McMurray and we were talking about, because like I said, we kind of been talking about like maybe we should do something else. But we never actually did it. But I was like, maybe we should invest somewhere else. And he was like, I just can't do it. And Troy is he's a handyman. He knows how to fix everything. He's such a doer. And he's like, I just can't imagine not investing somewhere where I couldn't just drive 15 minutes and plunge a toilet or fix a light bulb or do whatever. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. And I just shut the door on that because I wasn't a coach and I didn't know how to do mindset stuff yet. So fast forward now, our closest property is a 4-hour drive away and our farthest is a 54-hour drive away if we take the shortcut through America. That's anecdote 1. Another story I want to share with you is we bought our first larger apartment building in New Brunswick. We live in downtown Vancouver. The closing date on that was around April 3rd, 2020. So I just want to this is one of those dates that I feel like most of us know what we were doing. You know where you were. Yeah. You were at home. You were doing nothing. You were sanitizing your mail. You were hosing yourself down in cleaner and not letting people into the house. Just imagine that moment. So we went from there was just no possible way we could have gone even out there to see that property. So I share that to tell you that there's been a lot of mindset pieces we've had to work through and also some processes we've had to figure out. So I'll speak to both of those because this did not come naturally to us. It didn't come easily to us. And we finally got to go back out to New Brunswick in just last year in 2023. And at that point we'd bought, I think it was 10 buildings and we'd seen none of them before in person. So let me share with you some of the things that have allowed us to do that and to feel confident. And one of the things I didn't mention in the real estate blueprint, one of the pieces that you want to know before you go into these strategies, I talk about sleeping at night. Sleeping at night is so important because You know what happens if you don't. I'm just a big believer in sleep. I love my sleep. And so there's a lot of things that have allowed us to feel confident and sleep at night in this process. So let me speak to some of the tactical things. So, tactically, I will say this, and not everybody does this, but I generally recommend this to people. Go fly out to a new place, like get a sense of where you're trying to invest. And I think it does a few things. Gets you familiar with the community, the neighborhoods, the highways, the infrastructure. A really interesting thing to look at is even like how many cranes are in the air, as much as we all hate driving in construction, if you see construction, that actually tells you like what is happening economically. And so I think you can learn a lot just from being in a place and being there. Also, really, really, really key thing we've had to do is build a solid team. And I'm a big believer. Most people are not in real estate because they want another job. They're in real estate because they want to build wealth and create something else, allow real estate to make their life better. And so in order to do that, you need to have a great team. So we went out there, flew out to New Brunswick and we interviewed a few people beforehand and met with them when we got out there. Realtor, property manager, also happens to have a construction team. So it was kind of a 3-in-1 or 3-in-2 sort of deal. And what we did is not only meet them, this also makes a difference because especially in some of these hotter markets where investors are, like some of these realtors were getting like 20, 30, 50 emails a week from quote serious investors being like, can you just give me your pocket listing? Yes. And I'll tell you, like most of those emails are going straight into like, they're too busy. They're too busy. Like they're not giving their pocket listing to someone who just emailed them, but building a relationship like us, yes, flying across the country to do that made a difference. It was like, okay, they knew we were more serious than the average investor. Okay, yeah, we don't have any doors yet out there, but we're more serious than the person who just emailed. And that automatically put us in line a little further ahead in terms of priority of other deals and other opportunities. Like they know us, they see us, we have a rapport with them, and they know that we are also going to help them meet their goal, which is to make a sale and make their money. So I think being able to build that relationship was really key. The other thing it allowed us to do is we went and looked at units and properties with our team. So here's the deal. Everyone has a different definition of what nice is or what good is or what like retro means or what it means when someone says it needs to be renovated. True story, I was in like an $8 million house the other day in Vancouver, gorgeous, stunning estate home. And, the owner of the home was talking to me and she's like, yeah, it probably needs about $1.5–2 million of renos at this point. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this home is like absolutely beautiful. So that's her definition. And she was like, yeah, it needs to be redone. I'm like, whoa, okay. On the other end, you can have people that are like, okay, this is fine, this is functional, like nothing needs to be redone. And the important thing is to understand there's no right or wrong here, but just to understand what is our team's definition of good or bad or needs to be renovated. So that when we're on the other side of the country or we're on the beach or wherever the heck we are, that when they say this is good or this needs to be renovated, we understand what they're saying. And so we can create some alignment and common definitions on that. So that was really, really, really helpful to be able to get on the same page in terms of, okay, so if Matt says this is good, maybe need to ask a few more questions, or or Matt says it needs help. Well, maybe we could get a little bit more nuance and like, okay, well, specifically, how's the cabinets? Like, can you open the cabinets? Can you, how's the counters? Are they clean? Like, is it fresh? So we just had some alignment in definitions. So that was really helpful. So I think that piece is key. Is great team. An understanding of the market, and then shared common definitions. And I think the best way to do that is go out there. You can do that from afar too. And then when I say as far as systems, like honestly, it's actually kind of easy these days. Like there's listings come into our inbox. There is FaceTime. There is Zoom. Like there is this technology available that allows us to do this. You can sign all your documents from wherever you are in the world. And so I think that part is a lot easier. That's some tech that we're all probably using every day anyways. It's really like, how do you make the right investment decisions and have those systems in place so that it's easy to buy even when you don't live there? So I hope that answers the question, but feel free to ask any more if there's any more nuances you want to know.
Oh, no, it does. And I love the way you prioritized it as well, because it all starts with the relationships, right? And for those people that obviously don't know me, I'm an investor-focused realtor here in Edmonton, and it's the same thing. I have clients from BC and Ontario that fly the side to look, and of course you have other clients that are like, send me a good deal. How many clients are getting that good deal? versus, the serious clients that you have on your list that you're taking that deal to, which, by the way, totally different topic, is a good deal is not a good deal for everybody. But
can we go there? Can we go there?
we absolutely can. And I love the fact that you also highlighted the definitions. To be honest, I haven't heard it like being articulated in that way, but wow, what a way to articulate it. That's fantastic, because everything is relative. Literally everything is. And and honestly, when I'm helping other investors as well, that's one thing that I look for. I'm like, turnkey for one person and the next person could be completely different. One person's expecting that there is no dirt, no dust, no blemishes on the wall. And the next person's like, well, it can be lived in. Come on. You know what I mean? And with renovations, the same is true. Like, there's different scopes to it also. Condition for one person to the next person really varies. And being able to get clear on that between you and your partners that you have that are looking for these deals for you will make the world of a difference. So I love the fact that you highlighted to get clear on the definitions. Fantastic. And the relationship, I think, if you prioritize that relationship, that's going to be the most beneficial thing you can do. Firstly, interviewing people, finding people that you like and that you trust, and then ensuring that you work on that relationship with them is like the biggest thing I think you can do. So I love the fact that even the way you highlighted, and then you left like technology and tools for last, because that is the least important of it all, fantastically articulated. But yes, let's go there in terms of what a good deal looks like for one person to the next. I'd love to unpack that.
Okay. I want to say one last thing on technology, which I agree is kind of the last, but here's one more kind of fun, really tactical thing that anyone can do. Like Google Maps, okay? Street View. That is also that is something that I know Troy has strolled down every street in New Brunswick, I think, by now. And the cool thing is that you can also see it, like the evolution of a community over time sometimes. Like you can see like what did it look like in 2017 or 2013 or 2010. So you can see like, are properties on that street generally more maintained or less maintained than they were before? What did it look like before? Are there new buildings? What is the evolution of that community looking like? And so, I mean, that's something, even if you're investing locally, to be honest, and you haven't maybe been in a market that long, that also gives you a picture of like, how are things evolving and changing over time? So I just want to drop that last little piece that Google Maps is pretty incredible technology. You can literally, quote, walk down the street today, several years ago, and literally walk back in time in some of these neighborhoods as you're investing remotely. So I want to drop that. Okay, let's talk about the not every deal is for everybody, not the best deal. Oh my gosh, I feel like you would know this, obviously, as a realtor. Like people come to us all the time. We host networking events in Vancouver and virtually. And we work with clients, and people just come right to us like, how about this deal? What do you think of this deal? And it's like, and I have this graphic. We teach this in our masterclass. Like, your deal is the last piece of the puzzle, and every other piece comes around it, and it is so important. So when I talked about your goals, like your goals are more important because your deal doesn't make sense without your goal. And same thing with your blueprint, your time capacity, your interests, your skills, your strengths, your network, all those pieces. And your budget. Oh my gosh. I'm sure, you could probably have some stories on this, but we know people that have offers in on places and then are like, how do I get financing on this? I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like, you don't know if you can get financing on this? Like, if you don't have a budget, you don't have a deal. Like, you can't, that doesn't work. Yeah. And then you also have to know your financing strategy. And like, maybe I can quickly share a couple things on that too. Like, if you are paying in cash, that's going to be different analysis on your deal versus if you are getting private money or private mortgage. Your deal, if you're doing, like, for example, getting a private lender and you have to pay them back in 3 years, your deal has to have an exit strategy. It's got to be a BRRRR. There's got to be a way for you to exit from that. And so you cannot come with a turnkey deal if your financing strategy is a private lender or a private mortgage that needs to be paid out in 5 years. Otherwise, your strategy is appreciation, and that's about as much of a strategy as hope is. It's saying it's not one. So that financing strategy is really key for your deal. Like, your deal needs to match all these pieces. And then you need to know, like, the market, like, does the market make sense for this? Because not every strategy matches every market. Like, people always ask us, how are you finding cash flowing deals in Vancouver? I'm like, we're not. And they're like, oh, I thought it was just me. I'm like, no, like, it's not. Good news is it's not just you. Good news, you're not alone. But like, it doesn't always fit, right? And so you really have to understand the market. And you have to understand, like, your team, like, what can your team do? What is your team capable of supporting you with? And then like, does multifamily make sense, or do mobile homes make sense, or self-storage, or a single family home, or a condo, or a townhouse? Like, all of it fits in. And then, like, how are you going to make money with this? Are you doing short-term, mid-term? Are you doing long-term? Are you doing a fix and flip? Are you doing a burr? Like, what's your strategy to make money on this thing? So, like, those are all the puzzle pieces that your deal fits into, not the other way around. You don't start with a deal and then put everything else around it. Like, you have to know those pieces. And I have to know those pieces. If anyone, and I'm sure you too, like, if someone says it's a good deal, like, I have to know all those other things about you before I can tell you, even close, before you can know for yourself if this is a good deal. Because we're all in different seasons in life. We all have different financial positions we're coming from. We all have different goals of what we're trying to create. We have different timelines. And the great thing is that there is a deal out there for you, but it just may not be this one, but it might be the right deal for somebody else.
100%. I firmly believe in that. I really, really do. And I love the way you highlighted it, because it is the final piece of the puzzle. It is the last step, and starting on that step is not ideal. One other thing that you mentioned a little while back, and I forgot to touch on this, is beginning with the end in mind is an amazing strategy to figure out where to start. And the way I see it is, I don't know if you recall those little mazes that you could do. If you start at the beginning point, well, you may get stuck and then have to backtrack a little and then carry on going. If you start at the end, you always get to the beginning, always. It's sort of like a little cheat, a little hack code. But yes, I firmly stand on that. And then touching on Google Maps, you're right. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant way to see the path of progress, how things have grown. And I know I skipped over this, but being able to go to a community is such a big value add in giving you confidence when you are buying from afar. Even if you're not there when you put in the offer together, you're not seeing the place, but you have a better understanding of the community, the marketplace, is a night and day difference. And I see this all the time when I'm dealing with, investors from other provinces, and maybe they haven't been to Edmonton or invested in Edmonton, and they'll send me this property that's it cash flows great on paper, numbers look fantastic, but that's just one aspect of it all. And then when you actually come and visit, and I'm like, let's go have a look, and I can show you exactly why the numbers are the way they are. And then you can have a better idea on actually what the property looks like, what this part of the city looks like, what the tenant profile is going to be, so on and so forth. So I love the way you break things down. I can see that you work with people and assist people, because you have a very, very efficient way of articulating things. So I know there's probably people out there listening and are like, oh my gosh, I can't keep track of all these little things. Don't worry, we'll leave resources for you in the show notes below. You don't have to memorize all of this from this episode. Feel free to listen again, but it doesn't all end here. But Lisa, you mentioned another thing, and you mentioned your 80th birthday. And it's actually one of the segments that I have. One of my favorite segments on the show is Time Capsule. And I love to hear each guest's answer on this. So let's dive into this. So you sort of imagine that you stumbled across a time machine that allows you to travel back and forth in time. No, you can't change anything, but you can give and receive advice from your younger and older self. Now, before we go to our 80th, let's start back at your 18th. You able to speak to your 18-year-old self with the knowledge and experience that you now have. What advice would you give yourself? And this doesn't just have to be investing. It can be familial, it can be personal, it can be a combination or something, anything. It can be anything general. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self if you were able to have a conversation with them today?
Oh, I love that so much. The advice I'd give my 18-year-old self is, don't worry about listening to everyone else. Focus on spending more time listening to you. Learn how to listen and get clear on what you really want, instead of worrying about what other people think you should do, or other people want you to do, or what other people are doing. And really, the most important voice that matters is your own. So learn how to get in touch with it, how to listen to it, how to nurture it, how to build its confidence and its volume, so that it's the voice you're listening to more often than anyone else's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so powerful. And I think it's underrated, because that gut, like if you speaking to many people who are successful in different aspects of their life, like a lot of them like accredit that to being in touch with their inner selves, and sometimes some decisions and choices are just just made by the gut, and there hasn't really been any 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 actual physical reason that they can pinpoint as to why, but they're just in tune with themselves. But I also like the fact of when you're younger, you always worried about the next person and making decisions based off of other people and what other people may think or other people may judge you, and it's the quickest way to be unhappy. So just an overall aspect of how do I live my best and happiest life? Well, you live it for yourself, and that doesn't mean being selfish, but it means being true to you and being in touch with you and
Yes.
what fulfills you, and so that you could fill your cup and therefore fill other people's cup. So I love that. What a
Absolutely.
fantastic answer. Now, you've set the bar high. So let's see, looking ahead to your 80th birthday, what advice do you imagine that your future self would give you at your current age?
To enjoy the journey more. To enjoy the journey more and to not be in such a rush, to really just, our daughter she's 6 years old. So, and it's just been a hard couple years. We've been doing a lot of work on our businesses, growing the real estate portfolio. Troy still works a full-time job he was in Alberta, now he's in northern BC. And like some days, life just feels like a grind of like the things that we've had to do. And this has been an intentional shift. And I feel like this is what's coming through from 80-year-old me. It's just continue making that shift of like simplifying things and just being able to really enjoy these moments and enjoy the chaos of, yesterday I flipped my laundry over and I found like a carrot and popcorn seeds and beads in my dryer. And like, some days that's just like, oh my God, seriously, like I have bigger things to do in this world. I have things like I want to make things happen. I want to do cool things and I want to travel and I want to, and it's just like yesterday I just found this like reverence in that moment of like, how hilarious is this? And like, this is just such a season, a moment of life. And it's funny, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, right? It's also like a part of some days it'd be annoying, but it was funny. It was like this moldy carrot. It's a great story. And it's just a reminder of the season I'm in. So I think that's the message my 80-year-old self would have for me is keep finding these moments and these little joys and these pieces of this season because you never get them back. And
No.
it's about enjoying what you're in and making the most of it and trusting that everything else will come and there'll be times and seasons for it. But this is the season of moldy carrots and popcorn seeds in the dryer and late nights and early mornings and lots and lots of love and laughs and joy in our house.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. It's honestly so true. And oftentimes when you're just caught in the moment, it's hard to see that. I'm constantly reminded, like even with my kids, if you look back at videos when they're younger and you're like, oh my gosh, look how quickly time has passed by. And all of those moments, and in the moment you maybe you find yourself frustrated, but when you look back at it, it's like, oh my gosh, that was so funny. And so yes, you're right, being able to just snap yourself out of it and look at it from a higher level, and you're actually able to sort of just enjoy it a whole lot more and soak it up because it doesn't last long. So yeah, I know it's a common theme looking back, but it's a common theme for a good reason, because it's so easy for us to get caught up in the daily grind and miss the high level reasons and whys behind we do what we do, and being able to enjoy all of that, the good and the bad, the funny and the struggles, because honestly you're right, those bake for the best stories anyway. In the moment it does not feel like it, but looking back at it, those bake for the best stories. I love that. Now it's time for, and I think we have a little bit of time left, let's see if we can crack this in, rapid fire questions. Okay, so just honestly answer the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, so first one is, what's one mistake you made early on in your investing journey that you'll never forget?
Not investing, thinking about it, dreaming about it, wondering how other people do it, and then just like then letting that be the end. Like, so I didn't get to say this, but like conservatively, I estimate by us not taking action for those first 6-7 years when we thought about it and didn't do anything, we left $10 million on the table. And so the biggest mistake is not taking action, not investing. Hands down. That's the biggest, like, there's my $10 million mistake right there.
That is true. That is true. I think most people don't think of that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. If you had to start your real estate journey over with, let's say, only 50K in your bank account, what would you do?
Am I like this age or am I younger? Am I like, oh, do I get my house? Like, I feel like there's so many questions. Okay. First thing that comes to my mind, I think I'd house hack. I feel like house hacking is really still a little underrated.
Yeah.
I feel like I would consider moving. I'm in Vancouver. I'd consider moving to a lower cost of living place and maybe buying like a triplex or something like that, duplex, and renting out half of it and building up that equity and going from there. I think that's a brilliant way to do it. If let's say I didn't have a place, I wanted to be in Vancouver, whatever, like different life situations. I would take that 50K and I'd try and grow it into more so that I had more money to then invest in real estate. I would, but I absolutely, that would be, I'd take that money, grow it, and then have enough to be able to start investing in real estate.
Thank you for giving two answers, because you're absolutely right. Depending on where you are, what phase of life you're in, and so many other aspects, again, it's not a good deal for everyone. So there's so many different options to pursue, but I really like the way you answer that, because it was a tough one to answer. Next one is, what's the best advice you've received from a mentor?
Know how to exit from a deal.
Ooh.
I really, especially, and we've worked with private lenders and private mortgages, things like that. Like, your exit strategy is key. And I think, maybe I'll even back it up one more step. I think for me, a huge aha was this realization that you could either hope that things appreciate and kind of have like this, like almost like pretend like we have a crystal ball, which nobody has, and like speculation, appreciation, and then like this awareness that there's actually this whole other strategy, and that's like the BRRRR strategy. It's forced appreciation. And even like that was a big aha for me to realize, like, oh, there's a whole other way to invest in real estate that doesn't rely on these external factors of which I have no control or impact over. And so that even was like huge. Realize, oh, like there's ways to force appreciation, and like I have control over this. We can do things, and there's some predictability in it. So I think that was key.
Yes.
And then within that, like making sure that I have an exit of that. And I guess those two things are very interconnected, because so often, even just the other night, we hosted an event last Thursday where we went through our mobile home park case study and shared it. And someone in the room was like, oh, like I'm thinking about investing in this small town in northern BC. They might open a mine and the rents might go up and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, like listen to all these ifs. And I'm like, so like, what if, and at the same time, one of their concerns was like, well, what if we had to sell, we might need that money sooner if we have a baby or if we start this business or whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah, like you cannot rely on other people. Like you need to know, what is your strategy? How are you going to get out of this if that is? So I think understanding the difference between, appreciation or speculation plays and forced appreciation is a really important difference. And then knowing how to create the forced appreciation so that you have an exit is really key, and something that we've seen in the last couple of years, interest rates going up, tons of borrowers defaulting. Just a real upheaval. If we'd been recorded this conversation 3 years ago, it'd be so different than today. And I hope it'll be different in 3 years again. But I think that's really key. You've got to know, especially when you're taking other people's money, you have to know how you're going to pay it back. And you cannot rely on the market just appreciating. People, I guess I would also have some of the worst advice is that real estate always goes up. It doesn't. I was in Fort McMurray. If you look at what Fort McMurray has done over the last 10 years, 15 years, it has not gone up. No, it's actually gone down significantly. Even I'm in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, where, oh my gosh, there are Facebook groups dedicated to this real estate market. And it has plateaued the last several years. So even downtown Vancouver, one of the most notoriously expensive, appreciation, sexy markets out there, has not appreciated in the last several years. So yeah, that would be my best advice. Yeah, I suck at rapid fire. I'm really sorry.
But here's the thing, though, because rapid fire leaves a lot untold, and it's tough to give a responsible answer. So I get that. You want to expand on it so that people can understand why, because most of the time there's not a blanket answer for everything. So no, I completely understand. Rapid fire is tough to answer.
It's so hard. Yeah. I feel like a lawyer. Like it depends. It
does depend, though.
It really does.
Yeah. This has been amazing, and for all of you people listening out there, it doesn't have to stop here. Like, I'm going to leave all of the resources to essentially find out more about what Lisa does and what she has to offer and how she's helping other people and what her and Troy are doing themselves, please follow along. Follow on social media. She puts out great content. Lisa, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure having you on the show today. I feel like we should have just had like an extra long slot to just keep things going, because I feel like we could keep things going. I feel like I'm cutting it short here, but it's been really, really great having you on the show. For everyone else listening out there, really, I encourage you, go along, follow Lisa. You may be driving. So Lisa, is there any off the top of your head, like for someone just to remember to like, hey, this is the best spot to reach me at? Where should people find you?
I'm on Instagram way too often. Definitely find me on Instagram.
Instagram,
and I'll also say Facebook. We have a Facebook group as well, and that's where you can find out about all of our events. We host both in-person and virtual networking events. A lot of them are free educational events. So that's a great place. Intentional investing. And I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes there too. But Facebook for sure is a great place. And then I just personally am on Instagram a lot. I also want to say, Albright, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate how you made this a conversation about not just real estate and making money and wealth building, which we love these conversations, but also about how this fits into the wider picture of your life and living a great life. And I really appreciate that about you, how you took a wider lens to this. And I hope that everybody listening, I'm sure, is taking away this message that real estate investing can be a vehicle to help you have a better life. And that's what it's all about, right? Like, we're here for the journey, we're here for the experience and having a great life. And I love how you highlight that. So thank you so much for having me and allowing me to take this podcast in some of these a little bit different directions.
Absolutely. Like I said, you could have been running this by yourself. Like, it wasn't hard to just peel the gold off of you and just share it. So thank you for coming on. I truly look forward to doing this again. It has been such a blast. And for the listeners out there, if you love this episode, leave it a like, leave it a review, go follow Lisa. And as always, keep investing smartly. Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. If you're interested in learning more about the midterm rental game and how to increase your cash flow, you don't want to miss the episode with Aisha Gobani. This is your host, Albright Noble, signing off.